Hey guys, so welcome back to my channel. If you're new or simply not yet subscribed, I'm Brittany, and definitely make sure to hit that subscribe button. So on my birthday, we went to the Bennington Triangle and we were looking for a ghost town. So this video is going to be kind of like an everything you need to know about the Triangle, filled with disappearances and sightings of different creatures, but our personal investigation will also be included in the video. So make sure you watch it through its entirety. And with that being said, let's dive in. The Bennington Triangle is located in Vermont, and it encompasses a large portion of the Green Mountain National Forest, along with the Glastonbury Mountain. This area has been the spot of strange occurrences, having numerous sinkholes, rapidly changing weather, and unusual disappearances for centuries. An estimated amount of 40 people have disappeared inside of the Triangle, with a large amount occurring between 1945 and 1950. Some people who visit this area say that they feel confused or that they feel dizzy. And Native Americans actually believed that the mountain was cursed. The Glastonbury Mountains has a maximum altitude of 3,747 feet. The area that surrounded the mountains was home to the Abenaki tribe, which is part of the Algonquin Nation. The Abenaki believed that the mountains were cursed because the four winds appeared to meet at the peak, and they would often change direction erratically. The Abenaki would talk of stories of large, hairy, half-man, half-creature beings who lived in this region. And they would do everything to avoid going to the mountains themselves. They had this legend about an enchanted stone that was located in the mountain. And this stone would open up and swallow humans in seconds if it was stepped on. So don't step on the stone. The Abenaki would bury their dead at the base of the mountain, and it's believed that those spirits haunt the area. So as you drive through here, it's very, very rural. There's not many gas stations, there's not really any stores, and there's very few homes that separate, that's in the area. On April 4th, 1892, a man by the name of Henry McDowell, who worked in Fayville, which is one of the ghost towns, as a mill worker, had beat his co-worker, John Crowley, to death. He did this by bashing him in the head with either a piece of wood or a rock. He then tried running, but he would be caught in South Norwalk, Connecticut. And he would admit to everything. He said that he heard voices telling him to do it. After his arrest, he would be sent to the Vermont State Asylum in Waterbury, where he would escape by hiding in a railroad car that would be carrying a load of coal. And then he was never seen again. Some say that he went back to Glastonbury, but others say he's still hiding in the slopes. In 1897, John Harbour would be shot to death. He was only 40 years old, and he was a respected Woodford resident. John Harbour was murdered at Deer Camp in Brickyard Hollow, and that's this remote area in the hills south of Glastonbury. He was hunting with his brother and a family friend when they would hear a rifle go off, followed by the sound of John screaming that he had been shot. They immediately started looking for him, but they didn't find him until 11 a.m. the next morning, with his legs coming out from underneath a cedar tree. His murderer had a loaded gun that was left behind and actually placed by John. John's body had been moved from the location that he was shot because there was no evidence of him walking or crawling to the location where he was found. The murderer was never caught, and the case went unsolved. The former town of Glastonbury and the surrounding region is now owned by the U.S. National Forest Service. The 27,000 acres surrounding the mountain include 2 ghost towns and more than 36 miles of uninhabited land. And that is what we investigated. But I'm going to tell you more about the town before I insert our investigation. At the time of Glastonbury's peak, the timber industry was booming. People needed to get up into town, and lumber and charcoal had to get down. So in 1872, they built the steepest railroad ever built in the U.S. just to do that. The railroad started in Bennington and would end at the Forks. The tracks would climb 250 feet per mile and was 9 miles long. But because they were mining without replenishing the resources, it ended up with nothing but a sapling remaining. The railroad was still around and they wanted money. So in 1894, they would rebuild themselves as the Bennington Woodford Electric Railroad, and the town was reinvented to be a tourist destination, which would bring tourists to South Glastonbury. The railroad would switch from using traditional rail cars and would instead use more reliable trolley cars. And there was a lot of time and money that would be put into reinventing this town. They would turn the old logger's house into a hotel and the former company store into a casino. So very like touristy things. The town would open as a vacation town in the summer of 1897. But because they had taken all of the trees, the mountainside had nothing to stop water from rushing down, and the area became prone to flooding and soil erosion. A year later, a horrible flood would wash out the tracks, and that would be the end of the town. Because of its isolation and its elevation, nobody really wanted to spend the money in rebuilding it. So it would fall into ruin. The population would dwindle next to nothing. And as of 2014, only 8 residents were still left in the town. The town itself would actually be disorganized in 1937. And even when the town was thriving, it only had about 241 people at its peak.
Wow. Let's see it. Don't fall in. Don't fall off.
Hi guys, today we're gonna be hiking.
Kinda.
That's why I got my hiking.
You're looking good, buddy. Hey, come this way.
Oh, okay.
Well, the town has to have incorporated more than just the square, right? The village.
It's all muddy, buddy.
Oh,
Yeah, don't go in there.
I don't understand the random.
Yeah, I don't know.
Dad.
They get people to go through the mud that way. This would be a great place to bury the Highlander. You think the Highlander would make it through there?
No.
What?
Yeah, that.
Yeah, it's really deep. It would immediately get stuck.
Yeah. I found you.
Mommy, where are we?
Fayville, right?
Fayville, Vermont.
Yeah.
A town that does not exist. And he's got a shirt.
Guys,
New one. How come? What happened to the old one?
A triple man.
What happened to the old one?
Because I got those.
Yeah, you got cream cheese all over it. En route to Fayville, Vermont.
Yeah.
Right here. No houses left.
Glastonbury.
Fayville, I believe, is a hamlet of Glastonbury.
But it doesn't actually exist anymore. It's just still on the map.
That
Yeah.
way. I go that way. I go that way.
Have you been here before?
No.
You just got a hunch?
Oh.
What are you thinking?
Go this way.
You got any ghostly vibes? Do you? Oh, people been shooting clays back here.
I go that way.
People been shooting clays for sure back here.
Oh, look at the butterfly. Yeah.
Yeah, come on there.
Ew. I don't see it. I don't see it.
To your right. Over here. You don't see him?
No.
Is his wings spread open? Here he goes.
Oh, yeah.
I see garbage. I don't see any.
Garbage, but no ghouls.
Ow!
It'd be cool if we could find some, like, remnants.
Hey, guys.
No, come this way.
Why? Well, I want to reach away. I want to reach away. This way. We going this
Isn't this mommy's video though? You gotta be careful, buddy. That's still a road, technically.
Okay. Is that way? Oh, let's see if that go monkey. Let's see if that monkey book, Mommy.
It is muddy, so don't walk in it. Briere's very indifferent.
Where'd
It's a rock.
Okay, deal.
Is
Yeah.
that a keeper?
Mm-hmm.
Pretty cool rock.
That's a Fayville
Cool.
rock.
You don't have pockets.
Think you got a daddy.
You got a bug bite on the side of his head.
Hey.
Oh, wrong way, yeah.
You hear no running on the bed.
No, we're on the bridge.
Yeah, because you know real window diving, right?
Right.
I'm gonna
Yeah, it's pretty much like the bridge.
I'm gonna
That doesn't make sense. I guess that would be like the center.
I'm gonna put this waffle, guys. Yeah. Let you guys wait on the bed. On the bed. Oh, that's had rocket.
So Fayville is supposed to be a town that doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
And we're technically in the Vermont Triangle.
Yeah. Yeah. We enter come out town of Elgo.
Which is supposed to be known for a bunch of different paranormal things, along with UFO sightings, abductions, and missing people.
That means the alien been here.
This is going for a little while. I mean, it was going the whole time we were getting back in the car and stuff. And it came up with the children sing secrets and died in battle.
Oh, I think it's a diamond battle.
No, died. I think there might have been some sort of a battle here. I mean, well, Burlington, there was a battle.
Yeah. Burlington or Bennington?
Bennington, right? Oh no, Burlington. Burlington is the one with the monument, right?
Bennington. Burlington could have a monument, but Bennington. Bennington was the one with the monument.
Oh, so Bennington, yeah. And this is technically the Bennington Triangle.
But I don't think that that battle was actually fought in Bennington.
No.
I think if you read, there's a plaque around the.
What's that?
I don't know.
Nothing else has popped up. Oh my gosh. Oh my.
Go off road, no biggie. Public land.
There are demons.
There are demons. That's nice. 4,000 acres.
Located in Glastonbury. Purchased in 1998.
Glastonbury.
Glastonbury?
Yeah, where we are.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
You say Glastonbury.
I know I did. by the United States of
Find
America.
my body.
Where? You want a picture of that?
Sure. Yeah, so to give an idea, that's where we are. And there's, nothing. Literally nothing.
Well, there's Route 7 way over there. There's no roads other than what we're on right now. Which, this could be
Yes, it's
logging
me.
roads.
Can you give us a name?
That's a big
But
one.
I said, can you give us a name?
Huh.
And that was literally the next one. I said, yes, it's me. And I said, can you give us a name? And it said, Helen.
It drops off pretty far down there. That's pretty cool. Not so much on this side. Hi, Mommy.
Okay.
Happy birthday.
The area of Bennington Triangle is dubbed as one of the most haunted and unusual areas in the country. In 1867, there was a wild man sighting where a strange man would come down from the woods, pull back his coat, and expose himself to women in Glastonbury and Burlington. Obviously, this wasn't something they enjoyed. He also would carry a revolver, and people thought that he carried this just for intimidation, but eventually he was ran out of town and never seen again. Sometime in the early 19th century, there was a stagecoach that was filled with people who were going over the mountains near Glastonbury Woods, that's near present-day Route 9 in Woodford. It was pretty late, and there was a violent storm that had washed out the road. The driver had to even slow down to basically a crawl because it was just raining so hard. Things became so bad that the driver had to completely stop, and they were surrounded by the dark wilderness. So he hopped down from his seat and he took his lantern to kind of see what he was dealing with, but he saw something odd. Illuminated by his lantern light were strange footprints in the mud just ahead of him. The rain hadn't washed them away yet, and with how hard it was raining, that means that they were pretty fresh. The tracks were widely spaced. This suggested that whatever made the tracks was quite big. Then the horses started to get scared. He yelled back to the passengers to try and get their opinion, but at this point, the horses were going crazy, which might have meant that whatever made those tracks was nearby, watching, and the horses knew it. As the passengers got out, something ran into the side of the carriage hard. The passengers were trying to rush out of it, but the blows kept coming until the whole thing was on its side. The passengers were huddled together, terrified. They saw two large eyes staring at them. They couldn't fully make out what the creature was because of the storm, but it seemed to be about 8 feet tall and hairy. And then it just walked back into the woods. Shortly after the sighting, the creature would become known as the Bennington Monster. There is a theory that suggests that the wild man is the Bennington Monster, and this version goes that after he was chased out of the region, he had become isolated in the woods, which turned into him becoming a cannibal, which deformed him and made him go insane. I don't really see him getting that type of strength though, so I would link the Bennington Monster more to like a Bigfoot type creature. One of the most terrifying mysteries of the Bennington Triangle would take place in Glastonbury at the end of 1945. People would just start to vanish in the area, leaving no trace. The first disappearance was Middle Rivers, who was 74 years old. He was a native and he worked as a hunting and fishing guide. So because of his job, he was pretty familiar with the woods, and he had led 4 hunters up the mountain. They went up and things were fine, but on the way back, Rivers got a little bit ahead of them, and then he vanished entirely. The hunters figured, okay, yeah, we'll just see him back at camp, but panic would fill them when they returned and he was nowhere to be found. Police and a group of volunteers would search for hours. Figured Rivers was this experienced outdoorsman, of course they would find him. But the search would go on for a month, and they would find no trace of Rivers. Local lore says that Rivers disappeared near Brickyard Hollow, which would be the same place where John Harbour was murdered. The next person to disappear happened on December 1st, 1946. Paula Weldon, who's only 18 years old, decided to hike the Long Trail. Long Trail is this very popular trail in Vermont that covers 273 miles of wilderness and ends at the edge of Canada. It takes 2 to 4 weeks to complete the entire thing, and the Bennington Triangle overlaps the trail. Paula would leave her dorm at Bennington College and would walk to the woods. She was wearing a bright red coat, and plenty of people saw her that day on the trail. However, she didn't show up for class on Monday, and the college would call the sheriff's department. A search would be put together to search for Paula that consisted of 400 students and faculty members, which would total to 1,000 people with the public, along with bloodhounds, helicopters, and even a clairvoyant. They would search for weeks, and even a $5,000 reward would be offered, but they found nothing. No clothes, no body, no evidence. So on December 22nd, the search would be called off. The quality of the search party would be questioned, which would lead to the formation of the Vermont State Police. And because of the disappearances, some people even still believe that it is bad luck to wear red when you're hiking in the Glastonbury Mountains. The third disappearance would happen on Columbus Day in 1950. This was Paul Jepson, who was only 8 years old. His family were caretakers at the dump, and he was waiting for his mom to get back in their family truck. So he was sitting in the truck. His mom came back and he was nowhere to be found. She called for help and another search party would be launched. Hundreds of people from the town would join in on the search. They would scan the dump, the roads, and even the mountains. They would even set up this double check system that when one group got finished searching an area, another group would come in and double check it. Coast Guard planes would also be brought in, along with bloodhounds that were borrowed from the New Hampshire State Police. But they would lose Paul's scent weirdly at the same place that Paula Weldon was last seen. Shortly after, the search would be called off. And after that, Paul's father would disclose an unusual piece of information. He said that recently Paul had this unexplainable yen to go to the mountains. Some believe that Paul had wandered and had gotten eaten by pigs. Others think that Paul had been abducted by Chapel and East Reed and taken by car, which would explain why the dogs had lost his scent. But the case still remains unsolved. Only 2 weeks later, on October 28th, Frida Langer, who was 53, had left her family's camp that was located east of the Glastonbury Mountain near the Somerset Reservoir to go hiking with her cousin. About half a mile from camp, she had slipped and fell into the stream. Because of this, she decided that she wanted to go back, change into dry clothes, and then she would catch back up with her cousin. But she never returned. When her cousin got back to camp, she was startled to find out that her cousin had never came back to camp and that no one even saw her come out of the woods. Local authorities would quickly launch another search and again found nothing. But those weren't the only disappearances. On December 1st, 1949, James E. Retford was visiting relatives in northern Vermont. He was on his way home, so he got on a bus in St. Albans, and he was heading to the Bennington Soldiers' Home where he lived. But then he just vanished. No one, including the driver, ever saw him get off the bus. James was reported missing a week later when Bennington Soldiers' Home had called the police. When the police finally got around to looking into his disappearance, it had been 2 weeks, which a week after he's reported missing, and a week's already such a long time. So it's not surprising that people didn't remember him that well. And James was last seen by a friend in Burlington when the bus made a stop there. Some people thought that he got off there, but to this day, still remains a mystery. Then on November 11th, 1943, 37-year-old Carl Herrick was out hunting in the woods of West Townsend, which is about 10 miles north of Glastonbury, with his cousin Henry. At some point, Carl and Henry got separated. Henry had made it back to camp, but Carl never showed. And as it got darker, Henry started to worry. So he would call the police just as snow started falling. The search for Carl would last 3 days, and they found no trace. Then on the third day, around dusk, Henry found Carl's body. He was laying on the ground. His rifle was loaded and was leaning against a tree 70 feet away. Henry said he had seen huge bear tracks around Carl's body, but the official report says that Carl was squeezed to death, his lungs being punctured by his own ribs. And then on October 25th, 1981, Burlington Free Press reported that 3 hunters had disappeared near Glastonbury and that 2 went unsolved. So what is the cause of all of these disappearances? They're all within a very short amount of time. Aside from Bigfoot, some believe that aliens might be the answer. There have been several reports of UFO sightings and strange lights in the sky over the Glastonbury Mountains over the last century. The most notable being a flying silo-shaped craft, Skies of Bennington, by Don Pratt in 1984. Some believe that the Bennington Triangle is a vortex to another world, and others look to serial killers as the answer, dubbing them the names as the Bennington Ripper and the Mad Murderer of the Long Trail. But there was never any evidence to prove that there was one. The victims don't follow a pattern. Frida Langer's body would eventually turn up 7 months after she disappeared, but it didn't help solve the case. It was in an area that was heavily checked and near floodgates of the Somerset River. It was a very open area, and this would have made the body very hard to miss. But there she was. It's almost like she was placed there after. And her remains were in such a gruesome state that no cause of death could be determined by them. Another horrifying event would happen in Patch Hollow, and it's known as the Patch Hollow Massacre. The Long Trail travels north from Glastonbury over the peaks of Vermont's Green Mountains, and then dips down and back up the steep gulf around 140 and descends upon a wild and desolate area above Wallingford known as Patch Hollow. Patch Hollow runs in a north-south direction and is located in a deep trench of land that rests high in the Green Mountains that was formed by the steep slope of Bear Mountain and the more gentle Button Hill. In the center, there's a large swamp. In 2008, there was a beaver dam that had gotten destroyed with such an immense force that it had sent a large wall of water that went running down the steep hillsides and carved out a jagged gorge into the land, completely taking out a piece of Route 140. In the area was Patch Hollow, where there was a settlement of about 5 families that had made it their home. But now there isn't even a hint of civilization there. So what happened? On May 11th, 1831, one of the settlements in Patch Hollow was owned by Roland Wheeler. He was known to be jealous and violent. He was found guilty of SAing his wife's sister. Stand-up guy. When this would be leaked, it caused a large amount of resentment from the community, reasonably so. So community members from Wallingford and Shrewsbury were so disgusted that they decided to form a mob. Their intent was to tar and feather Roland. The threats were so public that he knew about them and decided to defend himself. Decided to make a knife from a large file and barred his door. On the night of May 11th, the mob that was formed made its way to Patch Hollow. They would be carrying jugs of rum, a bucket of tar, and a sack of feathers. However, the party from Shrewsbury never made it. They would get lost in the woods. The Wallingford group did make it, and they would arrive at Roland's house. They forced their way in by prying a hole at the gable end of the roof. 3 men would jump into the house and would fight with Roland in the dark. Roland stabbed 1 man in his side, and another would be slashed 14 times. The door to the cabin was unbarred, and the rest of the mob would pour in. During this, someone was killed. The mob stopped fighting, thinking they had killed Roland, but they made a mistake. They had actually killed Isaac Osborne by mistake, and Roland was gone. The group noticed that there was a set of clothes on the cabin floor. Roland had wrestled out of his clothes, crawled under his bed, pried up some floorboards, and escaped. Dr. John Fox of Wallingford would go to the cabin, and he said that it was the most terrible sight that he could recall. He said, the body of Osborne on the bed and the cabin literally soaked in blood. After Roland escaped the mob, he spent the night naked in the woods. Before light, he would steal a shirt from a clothesline and walked into the Hartsboro section of town, and he would hide in a barn. It needed clothes, so he would weave a dress from rye straw. And then he ran to his sister's home in Paulette, where he would be caught. Roland was arrested and put on trial in a makeshift court. It was held at a Baptist church in Wallingford. He was found innocent due to self-defense. The mob, however, got a different sentencing. 2 members would be fined $60 and 3 were fined $40. Shortly after, Patch Hollow would be abandoned, and no one ever tried to reclaim it. Then nature took back nature, and the mountain reclaimed the land. But there is even more that has happened or happens in the Triangle. While hiking along the West Ridge Trail, some say that they will hear a train whistle. However, this is miles away from any functioning train track. In one account on Columbus Day in 2008, 2 people were hiking the Long Trail through the Glastonbury Mountains when they would run into a young man named Dave. Dave had helped rebuild the fire towers along the trail. They started talking about tales of the mountain, and when they had heard of the disappearances, they kind of just shrugged it off as these exaggerated tales. But Dave had his own story to tell. He had spent quite a bit of time on the mountain while he was restoring the fire tower of the summit. While camping in Godford's shelter, his friends had said that there were nights that he would sit up in his sleep and just laugh nonstop. And other nights, he would do the same thing, but instead, it was screaming. Now, Dave was a very down-to-earth guy, so this behavior was very out of the ordinary for him, and he had never done that before. Another thing you may encounter on the Long Trail, or off of it, are arcane stone cairns. There's several of them scattered along the mountain, and no one knows why they're there. The theories go from farmers building them a long time ago, while they were clearing pastures, to passing hikers building them to act as beacons for bad weather. But no one really knows. The cairns were built in elevations where farming didn't take place, and most are located in heavily forested areas miles off of the trail. Another strange thing that happens in the Bennington Triangle, I feel like happens in every triangle, and that's weird, sudden weather changes. In one case, Chad Abramovic was taking a trip up the mountains with a few friends. They were in his pickup truck, and they drove into a strange clearing in the middle of the hill. They had found old cellar holes that were almost completely hidden by the tall grasses, and this is actually the same clearing Right, this is actually the same clearing that we were in. Shortly after they found this, they had weird, drastic weather changes. This was the month of July, and it was in the afternoon. And it was originally completely sunny. It started downpouring, and they were stranded for a while. But when they were able to escape it, the area around them was bone dry. Locals had even said that there was no thunderstorm that had passed through. Another man by the name of Robert Singley became lost in the mountain in 2008. He was a music teacher at Bennington College, and he had quite a bit of hiking experience. He took a trail that he knew well to Bald Mountain and then used the same trail to get back. But the trail didn't lead to where it was supposed to. He walked 5 miles before realizing he should have already been to his car. And just as he realized this, a heavy fog came in and the whole trail went dark. He walked to a maple tree and he tried to make a fire. Every stick that he reached for was an animal bone. He finally managed to light a fire and sat next to it throughout the night. In the morning, he found out that he had somehow ended up on the other side of the ridge from his car, but he did make it home, thankfully. So what is happening in the Bennington Triangle? Between disorientation, weird weather occurrences, strange creatures, and disappearances, there has to be some kind of explanation, right? Can this be explained away by science, or is there something more? Let me know if you guys have ever encountered anything strange in the Bennington Triangle, or if you have any paranormal experiences in general, not just there, that you want to share with me. I would love to hear them. You can go ahead and email me at brittanyforaghost@gmail.com. In the meantime, make sure to like this video, hit the subscribe button, and until my next video, I love you guys. Bye.